So I don't get a chance to talk about business all that often on my podcast here, and I wanted to take that opportunity today because you're not only running, your own entrepreneurial venture, but you're dealing with a ton of other companies that you're seeing trying to build brands, trying to sell products. And so I thought it would give you a good view of what some of these smaller companies as they're starting, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, because I know there's a lot of people out here who are seeking that path of developing their own product, being an entrepreneur and bringing things to market. So, wanted to kind of dive into that and see, some of the things that you see when someone's doing something well and captures your interest. And obviously you've been good at predicting what's going to be successful. So what are you looking for out there in the market?
I will say one of the coolest parts about being in the venture space is being able to peek under the hood of tons of different types of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And you do start to see patterns, similar types of business models, whether it's a subscription business or in food and beverage, companies moving into Whole Foods or whatever, and that whole process. So it's been super fascinating. I mean, just as context for the listeners, Wild Ventures is a small venture fund focused on consumer health, and we have an influencer model. So I work with a lot of health and fitness influencers like Mark Sisson, Wellness Mama, Chris Kresser, and they are authentic health figures who've developed their own platforms, and we want to build the future we want to live in, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we want to see in the world. And if we can help find good startups and propel them to faster growth and be more successful, like that is a huge win. In the influencer space, I see all sorts of companies that come to me and there's a slide in their investor deck and says, we're going to use influencer marketing to
Right.
grow super fast.
That's like it's the in word right now.
It's the N word. It's the N word. And I've seen, faces of people that I know in investor decks, and then I ping them and I'm like, are you involved with this company? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, your picture's in the deck.
It's just one contact they made one time. So
Yeah. I mean,
I wonder if I'm showing up in pitch decks at certain points.
I saw Rogan in one deck for a coffee company, and I'm like, that Rogan's involved with Caveman coffee.
Yeah. And on it coffee.
And on it.
Yeah.
And and they're like, oh. And I'm like, you just threw his picture into the deck. You don't actually have a relation. You're like trying to get people excited, and you don't even know the guy.
Yeah.
So it's definitely become trendy, and it's become a buzzword. One of the biggest mistakes I see is founders think it's a magic wand where you can wave some influencers over a crappy product and turn it into a good one. And you can't do that.
Cinderella is not an influencer.
Right. And I have,
I guess it would be the fairy godmother.
Yeah, the fairy godmother.
Yeah.
Or Tinkerbell or whatever.
Yeah. But if you do have the fairy godmother, that could work. You could turn pumpkins into a carriage. But there is no such thing as a fairy godmother.
That's right.
Go fuck yourself. It's not real.
Give people some whiplash there. I mean, if you think of, influencers with online platforms are a distribution channel.
Yeah.
They're a very powerful one that can reach customers directly with authenticity around a common interest. But in some sense, they're a distribution channel like Whole Foods or other retailers are distribution channels.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you get stocked at Whole Foods doesn't mean you have a good product. Like I was saying earlier, you can put asparagus water into Whole Foods. It doesn't mean it's not a ridiculous product.
Yeah.
So having influencers on your side can't turn a bad product into a good one or a great one.
Mm-hmm. So rule one then is product first.
Yeah.
Right. Like make a great fucking product.
Yeah, absolutely. And make a product that, I can't, the relationship that I have with the other influencers in my group, I cannot force them to promote something that they don't want to promote. Their platform is sacrosanct. It's theirs. It's their business. It's their brand. It's their authenticity. We don't have a contract that requires them to promote something. I tell them this relationship has to be based on love. Yep. And if this company does something wrong that you don't believe in, you don't ever have to promote them again.
Yeah.
So, and that's good for me because I get to tell the company, you have to make a great product that these people are proud to promote on their platform. And Like if they're getting backlash, like if there's an ingredient in there they don't believe in, they're not going to promote it.
Yeah.
So having a love-based relationship is really important. When I send opportunities out to people in my group, I don't send business terms. I don't send financial stuff at first. I just say, do you love this product? Try it, sample it, tell me what you think. Concerns, have you promoted it before?
Mm-hmm.
So that keeps, I've sort of handcuffed myself where I can't move without them saying like, we love this, but ultimately that's good because we shouldn't be promoting
It's the
something.
it's the vetting process.
That's right.
That's your form of due diligence. Is
Right.
taking it out to all of the experts and seeing if they love it.
Right.
And that's definitely probably the most important test.
And like there's another danger with the influencer stuff, which is, look, the reality is if your email list is big enough, you can promote something once and sell a lot of something, even if it's not very good,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you can't do that over and over again. So
yeah, my good friend George Bryant, who's a digital marketing expert, he calls that creating body bags.
yeah,
Right? Like you're taking your audience of hopeful potential people that you're building relationships with, and if when you ever do anything of disservice to them or they see something that turns you off, you just made a body bag.
Yeah.
That's just a blunt end of this connection where you're no longer going to travel.
And it devalues every other recommendation that person
Yep.
makes. So, but the reality is, if you were to get a bunch of people to promote something once, you could astroturf something, and for maybe 5 months or 6 months or maybe even a year, the growth numbers would look good,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the raw numbers of putting it out there. But that is a disservice to everybody because it's not a good long-term play. It just looks good. It's a flash in the pan. So one of the things I look for is companies that have some sort of organic traction. I don't want to get into a situation where we astroturf something and pump and dump sort of situation. So I like, part of, trying a food product or bone broth or whatever it is, or having people use the service is really important, or making sure like I got involved with Thrive Market pre-launch.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing that I could test there, but we knew that customers wanted to buy healthier products and brands for less. So like they have to execute on that promise, but that was an area where we knew there was market demand for something like that. So we don't want to astroturf something. So I love seeing some type of organic traction among people and among influencers.
The health food space is interesting because there are a lot of great products.
Yeah.
And there's, a lot of great products that don't do much, that don't really get anywhere and are just kind of hustling and languishing around. But, so that organic traction, can come from a variety of different ways. But I think obviously for you, that makes sense. Like, all right, we need something with some inertia already. Right. But for those people who are thinking about it, like, oh man, I'll just make a health product. Like there's a lot of good shit out there, and make sure you're doing your research first of all. Because I've known even some really smart entrepreneurs who have been, gotten way deep, $1 million deep into a product with it's a great idea, not really having a full scope of research.
Yeah.
Of what's in development, what's coming out, and then have something come out that's just a little bit better, and realize, damn, I missed here, and that's a lot of wasted money. And in the health product space, there's so many good products. You really have to figure out what your thing is.
Yeah.
And then have your strategy to start building that initial momentum. So what do you see that people, how do people get that initial momentum going? How do they make it start to happen?
So, a variety of different ways. Just one mistake on how to go about this.
Yeah.
I had a food company that was very aggressive about getting me to be an advisor or endorse their product. And I said, well, send me some samples. Like, well, we haven't made it yet. I said, get the fuck out of town. Like, I'm not going to put my name on something that I can't, that other people are going to ingest if I can't even ingest it myself.
Yeah.
So like they've sent me 4 different documents. Some of the documents are like 40 pages long. There's all this information. I said, go make the product and send it to me.
Yeah.
So step 1 is, make a prototype, even if it's in your own kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not expensive. You can prototype a lot of stuff for like $1,000 or
Yeah.
less.
Dehydrators, little
Yeah.
things that you can get, if whatever it is, and get an approximation at least.
Yeah.
I made, our best selling protein, which is the Hemp Force line. I made that just measuring and blending powders by hand in my kitchen.
Yeah.
And it took, I got all the ingredients, took a couple days. I'd get this one, just not there. And then I remember the one time I hit that right balance of all the different ingredients, and I was running around like a wild man. I was like serving smoothies to the neighbors.
That's right.
Like, try this. This is amazing. You got to try this. Like, knock, knock, knock. Hey, I made this smoothie. You want to try it? And that was like a cool moment, because it was really a dry blend of products, and I was able to source all these ingredients and mix them up. And then I knew that I had something. And then when I went to the proper manufacturer, I was like, all right, here's the recipe for that.
And when I see companies come to me saying, "Oh, we need $500,000 to get to the next level," or we need $2 million or something like that. A lot of times there is a way for them to show traction or get a prototype or start selling in some local market that would cost them $15,000. And I say to them, like you need to go do a little bit of hustling here that's much cheaper, because capital right now is not your obstacle. Like, there are ways for you to get a read on the market and whether people are interested in this product for way cheaper. And so it's, in some ways, it's a cop-out for some people to be like, oh, if I only had millions of dollars, I could make this a success. No, like, you can make this a success in a local area, in your local grocery store, or at your farmer's market, or among your friends and family, or on your blog for way cheap. It is cheaper than ever to start a company.
Yeah, I raised $110,000 to start on it, and I proceeded to waste $80,000 of it before we actually started to do what I needed to do, which is to make Alpha Brain, which is our true, first flagship product.
Yeah.
So really, if I didn't, obviously you can't say if I didn't, because I was learning things and figuring shit out. But if I didn't waste that money, probably could have started it with like 40 grand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've grown it, from cash flow ever since. It doesn't require this massive outlay of cash. A key element, of course, was that built in, I had Joe Rogan as a distribution channel. So I had to make an extremely high quality product, and I had, one way to get that product out, and that was enough. That was enough to start it.
Yep. So the another mistake. What was the other mistake that I was going to bring up?
Choosing the influencer is another mistake that we were talking about in the car.
Right. So I live in LA right now. So it's a the entertainment industry is massive, and even that bleeds over into the tech industry, where there's startups like Honest Company with Jessica Alba and Beats by Dre. Those are actually examples of companies that have leveraged A-list celebrities effectively. But if you take Beats by Dre, like, his reputation is all around sound of music. Yeah. So that is a natural, that is a core competency of him.
Yeah.
But I see all these startups that are trying to get A-list celebrities to invest in like their dog technology company or their whatever. And it's like tangential to whatever that celebrity is known for. A-list celebrities are way overrated. They, for like 6 or 7 different reasons. Their audiences don't, like, the reason why somebody is following movie star A or B isn't because of they care about health or whatever. It's because they're a famous movie star.
Yep.
The A-list celebrities have huge egos, and they're hard to deal with. They think they get compensated so much in other areas of their life that they value an hour of their time. They're like, well, if I give an hour of my time once a month to this startup, I want 5% of the company. It's like, get out of town. That's not, it's not appropriate.
Your value isn't there.
Yeah. A lot of the A-list celebrities inherited their platforms from the mainstream media. They were in a blockbuster movie, and so they ended up with a lot of followers on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. That is far less interesting than people who have built their own platforms through their own effort and their own team's effort.
Like Gary Vee.
Yeah.
Somebody like that.
Yeah. Who built it organically, and they have teams that are good at running this. A lot of A-list celebrities are basically, they've got an entourage. Their second cousin runs their social media, and they're like high school buddy, not to
And that's fair because they want people they can trust.
They can trust.
And that's the most important thing for them at that point because everybody's trying to take something from them.
That's
so
right.
Rather take mild incompetency versus a very competent, disloyal shark that's going to try and feed off all of their shit.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. But when it comes then to digital marketing, they're not very good at it. And they're like, I sent out a tweet. And it's like, oh, nice. But like,
well, and we've seen that, I've told this story before when I'm talking about businesses. Ludacris is a good friend and a great ally, great supporter. We don't pay him anything. He gets product and stuff. We support him in that way. But when he puts out a tweet, I remember he put out an Instagram post. He's got a huge, massive following, 12+ million on Instagram. And he posts funny shit with the hashtag This Is Ludacris. And he posts about Fast and Furious, posts about his songs. That's what people are following him for. But he posted something about on it was like, I take all of these things. I feel better than I ever have them. I live to be 120, just joking around. And we like rushed to the sales panel to check what the results were. It's just crickets.
Yeah.
There's crickets, whereas some smaller influencer in the health space will post something about it and we'll see a significant blip.
Right.
Or someone who people trust their like opinion. I remember Donald Cerrone was talking about our products on Joe Rogan Experience. Massive boost because people identified with Donald. They feel like they know him. Even though he wasn't an expert, there was a certain sense of authenticity and exposure of discussion where he was talking about it for like 30 minutes. It was like, oh shit, what is going on right now? We weren't listening live. Like something is fucking happening right now.
Yeah.
And so it's just such a huge
And his
thing.
career is based on performance.
Yeah, exactly. So, Donald is a fraction of the star that Ludacris is. But his impact versus Ludacris is massively different. So choosing your influencer is incredibly important.
Yeah. So go. People get too obsessed with status, and a rule of thumb that I tell founders, both with raising money, who you raise money from, influencers you get involved in, if you could never tell your friends, you could never post on social media that you raised money from this person, or you could never do a PR release, would you still want to do it? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, it validates, having some A-lister involved validates to other people that I'm doing a great enterprise and I'm succeeding. Mm-hmm. You take out that external validation and suddenly you can make a more thoughtful decision.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Like you got some like hotshot VC to invest. Pretend you could never tell anybody about that. Did you still want the onerous terms and everything else like in it if you couldn't tell anyone?
Yeah.
So, one of the people I'm very close to is Wellness Mama at wellnessmama.com. Like incredibly authentic, built her own platform, mother of 6, didn't graduate from college. 6 kids, she's 30 years old.
Yep.
Like does all this DIY stuff herself. Like incredibly authentic audience. She moves the needle in a way that an A-list celebrity never would.
Yep.
It's her purpose.
Yep.
It's what she is. So finding the right people is super important. The right influencers.
All right. So get a great product.
Yeah.
Find a way to build initial momentum, one of which is choosing the right influencer.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be someone big, can be someone small, someone speaking to an audience that trusts them. And then what else? What are the other steps?
Other ways, initial momentum. I mean, there's basic hustling like selling product among friends and family or at your local gym or in person. Online has completely changed the game in the food and beverage space. It used to be that the only way for a food and beverage company to grow was just through traditional retail. And the way I but now you've got online sales that where you actually have a direct relationship with the customer. You launch a new product, guess what? You can tell your customers that you have it. Trying to come up with new flavors, you can ask your customers what flavors they like and want. Completely changes the game. The old model was, I sort of describe it as fighting a land war, right? A land war in Asia.
Yeah.
It is really expensive. It takes a long time. Like most people have failed at it. Whereas online is sort of like air power, right? In the food and beverage space, if the goal is to get acquired by one of the bigger food companies, you still at some point have to fight the land war.
Yeah.
But air power really helps with
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
But,
Especially getting that momentum,
right.
Like you start to build resources in order to get enough
And it's
momentum.
higher margin.
Yeah.
Which margin, too few entrepreneurs focus right at the beginning on their margins and their unit economics, like making sure that it's every unit I sell of this, I'm making some money on. That is important for a lot of reasons. The more you can self-fund your own growth and bootstrap, the better you will be.
Yeah.
Like you will be independent. You do not have to raise money from outside investors every year and a half and dilute your company, possibly lose control. If shit hits the fan and the economy does poorly, you've got cash on hand and you've got a buffer there.
Mm-hmm.
It There are too many founders that say, I'm going to ignore margins and unit economics at the beginning. And once I achieve some scale, we'll get economies of scale. And like magically, it will become a profitable thing.
Yeah.
Economies of scale are real. And if you start, having larger production runs with a co-packer, you can get some price discounts and things like that. But, maybe you can improve your margins from 35% to 42% or whatever, but you're not going to go from like 15% to 50%. And I see too many people out there who are just completely unrealistic about their margins from the outset.
Sure. And that's again, one of the values of going direct to consumer is
Right.
direct to consumer, you have the CPA to deal with. How
Right.
much does it cost you to get a customer? But then you have a lot more room in the margin. But if your plan is to go, all right, I'm going to sell to distributors, then the distributors are going to sell to the stores. And then
Right.
the stores are going to sell to the people.
Yeah.
I mean, those margins are inherently going to be micro small.
Yes.
Unless you really have a shit product.
Right.
You know, like inherently that system is
you have all these middlemen.
Flawed.
You have
too many people stepping on it. And I think that's one of the things that Thrive has done, has been able to come in with really low cost, at least the Thrive brand itself,
Right.
things like almond butter and et cetera.
Right.
Because they're not having to go through 3 steps.
That's
where the
right.
distributor sells to Whole Foods, sells to the end consumer, go manufacturer to the direct consumer.
Right.
And that's, one of the things that we've employed too. We've been
you
able
guys
to
have done that very
really
successfully.
high quality products, really expensive products that actually, when we're making our products initially, before we established our brand, the manufacturer, we'd submit the formula after all the research and everything. And then we go like, you don't want to make this, man. It's way too expensive. And I'd be like, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Thanks for your input, but we're doing this too. They're like, no, I mean, I'll make you a sample, but you don't want to do this. Just trust me. I've been in this business for 30 years. I was like, yeah, I got you, but this is a different world now, and make it, and we're just going to sell it direct to the consumer, and there'll be that room. And there's, we do sell to Whole Foods and stuff, but there's no distributor margin room in there at all. High quality product and the ability to sell to the end user.
And one of the problems that happens if you don't have enough margin and you're going through traditional retail is you're like, well, if we just get more sales, we're losing a little bit on everyone, but we'll make it up in volume. Like it doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
You're just going to lose more. And what happens is if you have very low margins and your sales start to take off, your capital problem becomes even worse because it takes a lot of capital to have inventory at distributors and on retailer shelves.
Yeah, plus their payment terms. They're paying you at net 90, which for people who don't know, that means they're going to pay you 90 days after you deliver their goods.
Yeah.
And that means that basically you're being a bank and financing them via your product, their inventory for them.
Right.
And you want those in your favor. You want to get terms with your manufacturers and your suppliers, because cash flow is the dragon that you're always fighting as a small business, as someone who's starting it up. It's the beast that's always lurking, and putting favorable cash flow positions is huge.
And somebody buys direct from you and they pay up front and then you fulfill it.
Exactly.
It's complete.
That's the only way that we were able to scale on it up was because I had net 30, only 30, but net 30 with my manufacturer. So, and we were able to he was willing to do smaller runs. So one small batch of Alpha Brain, all the money I got, but I had net 30. So I didn't have to pay it right then. So I sold that, and then paid off that and was able to, have enough money for the next run and doubled it. And then sold that and then had that money. And the net 30 actually was just enough of a loan mechanism that allowed me, because the sales were coming so fast,
it's great
to build this thing up until I had enough of a surplus that we could get more aggressive. But having that net 30 coming my way, where the sales I was selling were immediate and what I had to pay was 30 days later.
Huge.
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 Huge. I would have had to raise way more money if that was reversed.
Yep.
If it was at the same time or if it was reversed, I would have had to raise a ton more money.
So two techniques that founders can use to help navigate that. I mean, one is if you're getting off the ground right away, do a pre-sale campaign. And that's a good way to validate demand. Like maybe you use Facebook ads or Google ads, or you have an email list or something. Say it's like running your own Kickstarter, sort of like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, here's the product we're going to be delivering. We're going to give you a discount that other people aren't going to get because you're paying up front. And if we hit this level, you're going to, everybody's going to get their product. And if not, like everybody gets their money back or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that hard to do. It's a landing page. It's a shopping cart, and then you have a couple of traffic sources. And you can also just set something like that up and send an email out to friends, family, high school people, whatever. Those people love you. They're going to buy your product at the beginning to help you get off the ground. And if you need to get 1,000 sales at the beginning, I guarantee you everybody listening to this has a couple hundred people that they can email to say, look, it's a $20 product. Like, we're getting off the ground. Would love if you would give it a shot.
Yeah.
Like that is totally feasible for anybody. You don't have to know any big shot influencers or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really smart idea. That whole Kickstarter model has really changed the game. I remember there's a watch company that I was following that did a massive Kickstarter, basically sold $1 million in watches before the watch was even made.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just showing from prototype. They made the prototype so people could see it. They could photograph it. They could do the whole thing. And this massive pre-order campaign, it's, good discount. So it made sense to pre-order it. And they just crushed it. They financed their whole growth with doing that. The other way is you're giving up big pieces of the company. Anytime you're raising money earlier, pre-market, like the earlier you raise money, the more you have to give away.
That's right.
And so the more that you can do these tricks to be as lean as possible, the better off you're going to be. And another thing that's also a fucking disaster that people do is they'll have a partner thinking really small.
Yeah.
Like they'll have a partner who's the owner of like one store. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, let's do this together. You're the owner of this one store. Well, great. That'll get you in that one store for sure.
Yeah.
But then you give them a 30% piece or a 50% piece. And then all of a sudden your business is to be in, your ultimate goal is to be in 1,000 stores.
Right.
And this guy's just running one store.
Yeah.
Is he going to be an equal value partner at that point?
Yeah.
I almost made that mistake with On It. We were selling a hangover supplement as our very first product before Alpha Brain. I was trying to figure out what market we were going to get into. And there's a excellent, more like the best DJ here in Austin. And I almost gave him like 2% of the company because he would have been able to spread it to all the bars. But that was like a fraction, minutia. That would have been the worst use of equity I could ever fathom at this point. Fortunately, I pulled back because I didn't have the big picture of what this ultimately can be. You can be so desperate for that small initial success.
Yeah.
You give up way too much on the front.
Slight side note. I am struck by how similar the dating world is to the venture and investing world. And it's like, when you said that example, it's kind of like, guy goes out with attractive woman and like, he's so overcome by the fact that it's an attractive woman that he's like, yes, this is the one for me. Well, are your long-term values the same?
Yeah.
Are your personalities compatible? Do you have the same goals? That stuff, like, you lose sight of that at the beginning and in the excitement of it, but it really matters if you're focused on the long term.
Are you both going to be able to contribute equally?
Right.
Equal value to the relationship, the partnership, whatever it is. And if someone's working full time on another thing and you're going to be working full time on this thing, it's ultimately going to be unequal. And then the partnership is going to collapse.
Right.
It doesn't have to be equality of time. It's just equality of value. So the scales of reciprocity are balanced.
Exactly.
Equivalent.
One thing that is really simple to do, and it's shocking how few founders do it, ask potential investors what a success would look like for them. They're like, when you're investing in this, what sort of return do you want to see for like, this was a success? And because there are a lot of VCs out there that will only invest in opportunities if they go massive. Mm-hmm. And it just has to do with the math of their business, because they invest in a lot of companies that go to zero. So the ones that succeed need to succeed big to make up for that. And I've been in meetings with people where, they're talking with investors and they're like, what does success look like? And they're like, $1 billion. And suddenly the entrepreneur's like, shit, I would have been happy with the $20 million company and would want to sell then. And if you have investors, particularly if you have investors who have the power to veto a sale, you are signing up. You're strapping yourself to a rocket ship without even realizing it, and it may just explode.
Yeah.
So ask your investors what success looks like to them. And like, you need to see whether you have a similar long-term vision and whether you're like on board for the same sort of ride. A lot of times, if sometimes you're in a situation where if you do need to raise money, you kind of need to raise it from whoever's there. But like, there are a lot of founders where if you're not turning down a few investors, you're not talking to enough people.
Yeah.
Like, you need to make
Can't be
sure.
desperate for money. Again, it's
Right.
like dating.
It's the dating thing.
There's nothing less attractive than someone who's desperate.
Yes.
It's like if a girl sees you going up to every single girl in the bar,
Like, hey,
please,
let's have
please,
sex.
please, yeah. I want to have sex with you. Please fuck me, please. You know, and then they come to you, they're like, ew.
Yeah. They're like,
gross.
what's wrong with this
Yeah.
dude?
And that's the same way. Like any investor, you want to be in a position where you're like, oh, thanks. You know, you're cute, but no.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
then that just is going to make them hornier.
Right.
You know,
That's right.
ultimately,
That's
all
right.
the way. You know, or having just multiple options.
Exactly. And the parallels there just sort of continue. My recommendation with founders, and this is not, lots of other people have recommended, given this advice, but you want to start in your initial conversations with potential investors, you don't want it to be about money, and you don't want to be asking them for an investment the first time you meet them. You want to form that relationship before you raise money. So instead of saying, hey, I'd love to raise money from you, be like, you know, we're building this company. I'd love to get your perspective on it. You know, down the road, we may raise some money, and I'd just sort of like to get your advice on going about that. You know, that is, I'm much less defensive and my guard isn't up as much. I'm much more willing to go have that conversation, which is low pressure, than somebody who wants to jump into bed with me immediately. And again, like in the metaphor, VCs are more like the women, and where like VCs also have a reputation, another parallel, for going radio silent on founders. Rather than saying no or giving an explanation, they'll just like stop responding. Same in the dating space, right? Like, and I get it from a woman's perspective. If you have a bunch of guys that are coming after you, like, it's not helpful for a woman to say, no, and here's why. Here are the 4 reasons why I'm not going to go out with you, right? Like, like it would just create like anger, and it wouldn't result in something productive. You know, polite women will find a way to gracefully say no.
Yeah.
That and you get the message and you move on, and it's fine. And polite VCs will do the same. Well, they'll actually have a policy of, like Andreessen Horowitz has a policy that, you know, the deals that they review, they will always respond to the entrepreneur, give them an explanation within a certain period of time. Most VCs do not do
their
that.
own ethos.
Yeah. So, you know, develop a relationship with potential investors before you need money. And if you do need to raise money, raise it when you don't need it and when you're not desperate for it and you're not reeking of desperation. Fundraising always takes longer than people think it will. You know,
and things are always more expensive.
And always, yeah.
So you have to plan for both of those things as well.
But the other thing that is encouraging, I mean, and people have to prepare for a lot of no's. Again, like it's sort of like the dating world. Like you have to get a little bit of a thicker skin because of timing or bad fit or random shit. Like there's going to be a lot of no's, and that's fine. Like you can't let it get to you. Like you need to be who you're going to be. The redeeming part of this whole metaphor is the best way to find a good investment relationship and like a long-term relationship in other areas is to just be an awesome person.
And if you're in the position where you don't need it, like the money that you raise, unless it's that initial seed money, like you will need some money to get started, right? Which should be as much friends and family, people you know. I mean, for me, it was Bodie Miller, who was my good friend, who was a skier, who had some money and an old investment banking contact. And like I said, ended up with $110,000. And that was my initial seed. These were friends. I put together a business plan. They like flipped it like it was a flip book, like
Yeah.
they were looking at an animation, like
Yeah.
you used to draw the stick figure that would do something. They looked at it like that,
Yeah.
put it down and say, are you gonna work hard on this? And I was like,
Yes.
yeah, I will. They're like, okay,
That's right.
cool. And then we just carried on with dinner. Like that was the initial round. And then from there, I've been in a position where I haven't needed anything.
Right.
So in that position, yeah, maybe if I got more money, it would have accelerated things. But also you have to know what to do with that money. Otherwise you'll just keep burning it and you'll end up with a company like, not to dog on anybody. I respect everybody, but you look at a company like Muscle Farm and they've consistently showed losses because they've consistently had money that was just pouring in. And if you have the money coming in, you can get loose. You can buy that $1 million, endorsement on Tiger Woods bag that's not returning on investment. I can fucking promise you that.
Yeah.
And you can do all of these things like, oh yeah, we got cash, we got endless cash. And it gives you this false sense of security. Whereas if you're on your grind and you know exactly what you have to spend, then, you'll know which people, man, I love you. You're my homie. We started this, but we just can't work. Like you'll have to be more ruthless and lean with how you run it. And ultimately that's essential. So again, like running lean for a while, not needing anything, being self-sufficient.
Great discipline.
I mean, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Another mistake I made, man, is I wish I would have had a mentor who'd done what I'm doing, who earlier on. I've met them now and that they've been helpful now, but early, I could have avoided a lot of mistakes. I mean, I've made a ton of mistakes here, and there's people who've made your same mistakes that can give you a leg up. And hopefully this podcast itself is like one of those venues where we're being surrogate mentors, where we're just given a few things to worry about. And, you never know which one of these things might be helpful because there's pitfalls that you'll find on the corporate governance side, on the tax structure side, on the sales tax side, on all of these different things that you may not know about, that somebody else will know about.
There are, if you think about the obstacles you face in your business, and there are basically two types. There are solved problems that other people, they're just known things that other people have figured out how to do, and many companies. And then there's stuff that's new and novel. If you're going to make a mistake, you want to make the mistake on the new and novel stuff, right? Those are hard problems, and there are going to be mistakes. You want to avoid as many of like making mistakes on the solved problems as possible.
Yeah.
And the best way is just find somebody who has done as close as possible to the same thing before.
Yep.
It's not about whether they're wealthy or not. It's have they done this before?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like in hiring, like if, so I at the beginning of last year, for the first time I hired a business coach. I know it was for a set period of time, but like I had always struggled to work with a coach, or I haven't worked with a therapist before, but like part of the reason I hadn't is if I don't respect the person, I have difficulty hearing what they're saying. And the person that I hired as a business coach had set up venture funds before.
Yeah.
And so if I was, bitching and moaning about something, like, yeah, he could hear me, but he could also be like, oh, you should probably just set it up this way.
Yeah.
And that's just like massive relief.
I can't tell you how many pitfalls I could have avoided if I had known the right people along the way who were really like, in an advisory board or formal mentorship, informal mentorship, whatever.
Yeah.
But if I had found people who had created, supplement and foods companies, that had done the thing before, it would have been huge. Or even on the fitness and gym side, I really went about this like knowing the movement, and that's really essential too, being authentic and knowing your movement. I mean, that was the secret sauce of On. It still is, but what I didn't do is just find the experts who'd done, it's never going to be the same company as you, but done in the same field. It could have given me all the solved problems.
Yeah.
Like, here's all the solved math.
Right.
I don't need to redo the math problem and figure out
here's
all
what
the
a co-packer contract.
Like,
here's where you can negotiate. Here's where you can't.
Yeah.
Stuff like
that.
That
would have been huge.
One of our portfolio companies is Kettle and Fire Bone Broth.
Uh-huh.
And one of the co-founders, Justin Mayers, is so good about asking questions. Like, he probably asks too many questions, but what I love about it, but what I love about it, it's coming from a place of no ego.
Yeah.
We're all on the same team. And he would rather err on the side of asking a few too many questions about solved problems than be like, oh, I don't want to seem like I don't know the answer or whatever. No ego. He just asks. And if we know, we say it, and it's great. It's great. I love the spirit. Like, you have to be self-aware. Like, there's the right amount of self-awareness as a founder, where you have to have irrational confidence in whatever you're doing, but you need to get feedback, have a good feedback loop from outsiders.
Yeah. I think that's important. And that ego thing is huge. I've seen founders derail their company based on, unresolved internal shit time and time again. It's one of the reasons why I don't like taking minority investments. I've been a minority investor in a couple clear wins and just watch the founder snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yep.
Like, just too afraid to launch their product until it was perfect. Well, guess what, motherfucker? That's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
You do the very best you can, and then you use that money to improve it and use your new knowledge to improve it.
Right.
You can't stay in prototype forever. You'll die.
Yeah.
Or a million other problems that come from just internal stuff, fear of failure, and then this idea of fear of success. Fear of success is just fear of failing on a bigger platform.
Yes.
Like, I'll take my failure now before I fail even bigger. There's no such thing as fear of success. It's just a different mask for fear of failure. But all of these different self-worth issues and power issues, and, I've seen people in organizations where they wouldn't hire anybody who is smarter than them, and all of these classic mistakes that, you gotta do the internal work, and the more internal work you do, the easier everything will be.
I'm not alone in observing this, but in my career, I have definitely found that the biggest obstacle to me going to the next level is always myself.
100%.
It is always myself.
100%.
And whatever hangups or fears I have, or there's some task I don't like to do, or I have some scar tissue from a previous venture and that's unresolved. And that's why when Bodie Miller and his people skip over your business plan, that's the right thing to do.
Right.
I never invested in a business plan. Coming up with a business plan is a good exercise because it does get you to think about things you might be forgetting.
Yep.
Oh, you need to raise $1 million. Well, we forgot about this amount of inventory. We actually needed $1 million too. That's a useful exercise. The business plan changes the hour after it's written.
Yeah.
So we don't. We think it's good when we see a business plan because it shows some discipline to think it through. But I never look at a business.
Yeah, it shows you that you're serious.
Yeah.
Other than that,
right?
Unless you've been in market for a while and the numbers are hard,
right,
it's meaningless.
Yeah, and the it's really true that you have to invest in founders.
Yeah,
and that's the hardest. It's easy when somebody has a track record of successful ventures. If they don't, that's hard. And when people are young, they have motivation, they have energy, but maybe they haven't done it before. A bunch of the companies that we've worked with, they're first-time founders, and they've turned out to be great people. But that's also a hard conversation to have if you pass on an opportunity and you have some question marks about the founder. You can't. That's not something where feedback is helpful.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong. Who made me the judge of the fucking
we
world?
all have our own perspective and our own perceptive
so
shifts.
I'm not going to tell someone that maybe I don't have full confidence in them, because maybe I'm the idiot in this situation, and then I undermine their confidence.
Maybe dudes with blonde hair you inherently mistrust.
Right. Everybody has biases. I know I have biases. So that is definitely a gnarly problem. But it's if I was talking with a friend of mine who ran an incubator, and looking back at his investments, he said one mistake one thing that I learned from the process is it's better to invest in great founders, even if you're not sure you have the market figured out or the opportunity figured out, than a place where you love the market, but you have some big question marks about the founders. Because it's nothing's more important than people, and if you have the right people out there, they will solve the problems, they will pivot, they will do whatever's necessary, and also it's a relief. In my life, when the Thrive co-founders are very talented founders, and they made it very easy on me to make introductions in my network. That's one of the rules of thumbs I use is like, just sort of subconsciously, I have a sense for how much I want to introduce someone to Wellness Mom or Mark Sisson or something like that. And when I have no psychic load or qualms about introducing someone, that's a sign to me that like, yes, I trust this person and believe in them.
Yeah.
Um,
That makes sense. It's like a vibration,
yeah.
which is like an overall assessment of multiple levels of consistency and integrity and all of these things working in coherence.
Right.
Together.
It's like I achieve a flow state with them.
Yeah.
Like my mind is just at ease with them.
Yeah.
And, you know, so, and early stage venture stuff, it's just, I could do the entire job, maybe not at the beginning, but like once you get in the flow of it, I can do the entire job without math. Like the math isn't complicated. These aren't like private equity deals where you have like math dudes doing discounted cash flow analysis or whatever. You're like, great founders, big opportunity, love the product. Let's go. You know, it's not complicated in like a mathematical sense.
Are the founders and are these entrepreneurs, do you think, because I often wonder, I feel like people think like this is always the answer. If only I had my own business. But, being one myself and
entrepreneurship's fucking hard.
It's a trial by fire.
Yeah.
Like it's going to bring out it's going to put the pressure on you. That's going to reveal whatever flaws that you have internally, whatever things that are unreconciled within yourself. It is a beast. I mean, I was driving home. I actually tweeted about it yesterday. Who knows when this podcast will go out? So don't look yesterday when you're listening to this, because it won't be yesterday then. But I was driving home and just there's a lot of stuff going on right now. A ton of things happening, and I remember thinking, I'd put in a full day at the office, ton of stuff going on. It's late at night, and I was thinking, man, wouldn't that be nice if my work was done? And I was just like, all I had to do was just show up the next day. Because I knew that night it was going to be just a wild ride of planning, plotting, responding, taking care of all of these things until finally, I could get my stress levels to drop enough to snatch a couple hours of sleep before I had 2 talks, 2 podcasts, and a whole list of other shit to do. But this is what I'm supposed to do. This is who I am, what I'm supposed to do. And I think Gary Vee described it as like, I couldn't breathe doing anything else.
Yeah.
Like, unless you're so called to this thing that this is the only way for you to do it, the only way for you to make your unique mark. This is part of the accomplishment of your mission.
Yeah.
Like, look at some other options first, at least, because it's a beast.
You're absolutely right. And what has startups are now very cool. And there have been various times when they've, been cool, during the bubble and whatever. But it's kind of like riding a motorcycle. Like I've thought about, learning how to ride or whatever. And I've had friends tell me, they're like, if you're doing it to look cool, you should not do it.
Yeah.
Like if you're into machines and that experience and you're going to become obsessed with it or whatever, then do it. And great. But if it can really fuck up your life. By the way, if people read one book on entrepreneurship, I'd highly recommend Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1. It's short, not a lot of jargon, very original. It's great. The subtext of the whole book is that entrepreneurship sucks. It's really hard and most people shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he is talking about like big venture-backed stuff. Tesla, SpaceX, PayPal, whatever. And there are a lot of lifestyle businesses that don't require the same type of sacrifice.
Kind of, but it's a little bit all relative
right.
though, like I think that's also the thing. It's just the stakes matter the same to you, whether you're running your small, 3-person operation as it does for a bigger person. I mean, there is a magnitude of stress as things get bigger. Like, having to, when the
number
company
of employees,
the company was 8 people, but then again, it's like 8 people you really love and are really,
that's right,
tried so hard to get them to buy in and take the risk.
Right.
And then the people who at, my 130th employee, they're taking less risk, in coming into this, but
You have a lot of people.
There is a magnitude of stress.
Yeah.
I mean, I will grant and acknowledge that.
But
it can
stress
be a beast,
can.
but it's still relative.
That's right, and it expands. It like expands to fill the space that is available. I one of the I remember I think it was in college. I had a job that was basically like a 9-to-5 job, and it was so relieving that 5 o'clock came around and I didn't have to think about my work. I could just pursue passions and read, and I didn't have that like psychic load weighing on me. And
regular income.
Regular income
that's just coming in.
I haven't had a regular monthly paycheck since 2010.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I'm not close to retirement. Let me put it that way. Like, I don't have like a giant, I don't own a car right now. People are like, oh man, you've got your own venture fund. You know all these people. And I'm like, yeah, I'm still Ubering around everywhere. And like, I'm looking at lease rates on stuff. And so it, that's very real. And I've lost relationships because they're like, you don't feel present with me, or you're having difficulty turning off, or things like that.
For sure.
A lot of people don't see the sacrifices that entrepreneurs make.
Some of the happiest things I've done have been like when I get a chance to do something that's like literal manual labor.
Oh, I love it.
Like here we are, we're building a fire pit today, and that's the job. And when the job is done, or it gets dark, and it's like we're fucking done, and then just to be able to relieve that stress that way, that's great, But there's immense value in that, and so don't think because you're doing that and you're digging it that you should feel some pressure and compulsion. I should be my own business owner. Maybe if that's truly in your heart and that's what you must do to be in your mission and to be in the profession that speaks to your soul. Yeah, fucking do it for sure. And we'll find people to help you listen to this. A lot of these tips, but man, if you're happy just doing your thing, like know that that's rad too.
Yeah.
And that all of us at certain points who are in an entrepreneurial position are like, will sometimes be jealous of you just as you're jealous, of the entrepreneur.
Yes. And, it's easier to achieve a flow state if you're doing something that's challenging but achievable, and you're making incremental progress. So if like I recently bought was at a flea market, and I bought a mirror with, big wooden frame. And so I scraped off all the paint and sanded it down. It was that sort of project where I could just turn off the front of my brain and just do it. And I was making progress the whole time, and I was getting better at it, and it was bliss.
Yeah.
In the venture work that I'm doing, we're set up to do 12, 15 deals over a couple of years. And so I might be working for 2 months on various things, and like nothing comes of it. We don't do a deal or something like that. It's really hard when it doesn't seem like you're making incremental progress on something, and then suddenly you make a ton of progress all at once. But that's psychologically very difficult. We'll all have like a 3-month period where like, what did I accomplish in this 3 months? And then I'll have a 2-week period where we suddenly do 2 deals, hyper productive. But it's very unsettling on the brain to sometimes feel like you're not making progress.
And also bear the burden of these unknown threats. Monsters. As an entrepreneur, monsters come out of the fucking woodwork.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you're going in like, another day at the office.
Yeah.
Bam. You get served with some notification of a patent infringement.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And then so you're conditioned to this. It's a little bit like, business PTSD to a certain degree, where all of a sudden things are calm, but some unseen thing comes out and just fucking form tackles you.
Yeah.
And you're like, God damn, I didn't see that coming. Well, all right, now this is the new playing field, and now you adapt and you get ready. But it's a lot different, and that it happens in regular life too. There's injuries and things, but it happens frequently when starting a business.
One of the areas where I've realized I need to improve a lot is when you put yourself in a high stress position, like almost every day. My morning routine. If you don't have something to start your day off right, to put yourself in the right mindset, there's only so long you can go, just toughing it out. And one of my problems is I just try to tough shit out. And I'm like, oh yeah, high stress period, and I'm just going to power through.
You think of these false summits. Like
Yeah.
you think it's really external, like,
Yes.
yeah. I just get to this point, shit's going to be easier for a while.
Yeah.
Everything's a false summit.
Yeah.
It's all a false summit.
Yeah.
All the battle is internal.
Yeah. So what I've been working on is trying to get my morning routine right. Like when the Paleo Manifesto came out in 2013, about 5 months before, I had to quickly, unexpectedly change apartments. And so found some people on Craigslist in Manhattan and moved into a spare bedroom. And I was so focused on the book launch that I didn't set up my room, and I was sleeping on a wooden floor in like a sleeping bag. But like still, it wasn't like a thin carpet. I'm fine with sleeping on the floor, but it was a very hard surface. and the room was drafty, and it was like, February, March in New York. And, I'm like, I'm just going to tough it out. And I got to my book launch, at the end of the summer. I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I was exhausted. I couldn't wait for it to be done. And I just didn't set myself up to.
Yeah. You weren't taking care of the base of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, we've given people a lot of fucking tips here.
Yeah, we have.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Where should people look in? Where do you like to point people if they want to keep up with you, keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, if they want to learn more about Wild Ventures, our site is wildventures.vc. There's not a blog or anything there, but they can learn more about it there. And then I stopped blogging. It's taking up too much of my time. So I'm on Twitter at John Durant, JohnDurant, and I tweet about all sorts of stuff. So, go there knowing that it could be lots of topics.
There's a bit of wisdom there, and I stopped blogging because it's taking up too much time. Like for all of us, being able to say no and being able to stop something when you have momentum in it and progress, and be able to cut it.
Yeah,
like that's huge.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to cut some shit if you're a hoarder of the things that you're working on and stuff. You got to be ruthless with that shit.
Saying no is a really important lesson.
Yeah,
the busier you get, being able to do it gracefully. And
yeah, do it in a way that's authentic and honest. Most of the time, if you're straight up with somebody, or straight up with yourself, then it's smooth, and it's just like, okay, I get it. It makes sense. Yeah, just really busy now.
Sorry, I don't take meetings in the morning because that's when I get my work done.
Yeah.
And people are like, okay. Yeah. They're like, oh, most people are like, man, I should do something like that. That sounds like a really good idea.
You're actually more admirable for doing it rather than them being bummed out.
So
cool,
but,
man.
But also like admire what you've built here. It's just remarkable. And even though I'm in the investment space now, in the venture space, I tell people, if you can bootstrap your company and your business, do that. Don't take on tons of investors. Maintain control, like maintain ownership, take it in the direction you want to take it in. And it gives you so much freedom if you can do it that way. There are some businesses where it requires capital to get over the hump.
Yep.
Where you can't, it's really hard to bootstrap it. You can't bootstrap a rocket ship to Mars.
Well, and it's also too, if they're working with someone like you, it's a value add.
Yeah.
This isn't, smart but dumb money.
Right.
Someone who's not going to really help your business.
Right.
You have a network of individuals and people and expertise. You're going to help them with these solved problems. So they're getting money and expertise. And that's really what you got to look for. And one only is not going to be enough.
And when you generate, when you generate online sales, it allows you to avoid raising money in the future. So when we talk to entrepreneurs, we're like, yeah, we're going to come on board. We're going to own part of your company, but we'd like you to avoid an entire funding round or more on top of this, because we're going to generate a lot of sales and you'll have money in the bank. Yep. And if you don't need to raise money again, wonderful. We love that.
Even better. Yeah, because you get diluted too.
Yeah.
Totally.
Thanks for having me on. It was
beautiful,
really
brother.
fun.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Because usually I'm like all paleo all the time. Now I get to talk about something else.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Cool. Thanks.
That's dope. Thanks, everybody. Much love. Peace.